Wait. They're closing this thing out on a fart joke? Oh, they better give us a season 2!
You know, believe it or not, I'm not really the biggest fan of reboots or sequel series, and I know, that sounds absolutely insane from the guy who has one of the biggest videos hyping up the new regular show series. But I just always felt like it takes a special type of magic to number one, create a good show, but to also maintain a good show for a good couple years. And a lot of times, once that spark runs out from the original run, it's oftentimes really hard to replicate. So you can imagine when it was announced that the Fairly OddParents franchise was getting another show, yeah, it's safe to say I wasn't the happiest person in the world. I can't really speak for other people, but at least for me, the Fairly OddParents was a staple of my childhood. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna sit up here and act like it was my favorite cartoon of all time. I was way more of a Cartoon Network kid than I was a Nickelodeon or a Disney kid. But anytime I would watch Nickelodeon, the Fairly OddParents and Danny Phantom were two of my favorite shows to watch. Which is kinda hilarious that they're both Butch Hartman shows, but I just remember having really fond memories watching the Fairly OddParents. And it's really easy to see why. The original Fairly OddParents was such an appealing show. It was fun, it was wacky, it was different from anything else airing at the time. A show about a boy named Timmy Turner who wakes up one day and is gifted fairy godparents that'll grant his any wish. That literally sounded like every kid's dream. I remember sitting there and watching Timmy make his wishes and imagining in my head, what would I wish for if I had fairy godparents? But oftentimes my questions would be answered by the end of the episode, because many of Timmy's wishes were actually pretty realistic to how kids think and what a typical kid would wish for. Wishing to be in a cartoon, wishing to only eat dessert, time travel, being in a video game, being a superhero. I feel like if you walked up to any kid at the time and asked them if they had one wish, what would they wish for, it would pretty much be in this lane. But the appeal of the Fairly OddParents wasn't just the fact that Timmy had the ability to have his wishes granted. Unlike a lot of kid shows involving magic, Timmy's wishes had consequences. And we saw in real time that a lot of the cool things that a kid would wish for would kinda suck in real life. A kid eating dessert every meal would quickly get tired of stuffing his face with cake. Going back in time and messing with events would open a whole can of worms. And meeting your favorite superhero, you know how the saying goes, never meet your idols. The Fairly OddParents had this mix of fantasy, realism, and comedy that just made every episode so good. And I think it's really just a testament to how good the writing was at the time, because this show was one of the most popular shows on Nickelodeon for years, only ever really being beaten out by SpongeBob, which really there's no shame in that. SpongeBob's been a juggernaut of a series for years. But Butch Hartman will probably tell you something different. But nonetheless, in many people's opinions, the original Fairly OddParents is widely regarded as one of the greatest cartoons of all time. I mean, still to this day, I still think Channel Chasers is probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest cartoon special of all time. And it literally came out in 2004. But as the Fairly OddParents would continue to air with each season, it got more and more difficult for the franchise. For one, the show was canceled not once, not twice, but 5 different times by Nickelodeon.
We kept making the show. It did get canceled 5 times. They said, no more, you're all done. And just as I was finishing a season and thinking it was over, they would pick it up again because the ratings were so strong. They say, Butch, you know what? I'm like, what? They say, we're canceling your show again. I said, well, why are you guys stopping it now? It's still not doing as well as The Sponge Show. The Sponge Show is our Mickey Mouse. Oh, hi, Pluto. Hi, Patrick. I'm SpongeBob. And you're the Donald Duck of Nickelodeon.
Which is kind of just insane, because if SpongeBob is your A show and the Fairly OddParents is your B show, but the Fairly OddParents still brings in a ton of viewers, why would you get rid of it? It just seems really counterproductive. But on top of the crazy network cancellations, the Fairly OddParents was also going through franchise fatigue. Which really isn't surprising. The show started airing 1 year before I was even born, and ran all the way from 2001 to 2017. That's a 16-year run. Many shows like Family Guy, The Simpsons, South Park, and even SpongeBob all have went through the same franchise fatigue, where you can tell that they're starting to run low on ideas. And like many shows that go through this, fans of the Fairly OddParents begin to criticize later seasons, saying that the series had become stale. Now, the writers would try to shake up the series to combat this. The first time this was done was when they introduced Pooh for the first time, which is still to this day one of the highest viewed Fairly OddParents episodes of all time. And to give credit where credit's due, I do remember after Poof was introduced, the franchise did start to feel fun again for a while. I remember I watched his introduction episode live and had started tuning into the show again. But in reality, the views that Poof brought were really only temporary. And many of the fans of the Fairly OddParents, including myself, quickly began to stop watching the show again. The writers would once again try to regain the attention of the audience by introducing a new character. This time it was Sparky the magical dog. Unfortunately, Sparky was almost universally hated. I know in the advertisements that I saw, it gave me no interest in actually checking out the Fairly OddParents again. And it even got to the point where the character was so disliked that the writers actually wrote him out of the story, which yikes. The last and final attempt of getting the ratings up on the Fairly OddParents was the introduction of the character Chloe. She was introduced in season 10 and was meant to be a foil character for Timmy, as he was now forced to share his fairies with her. Which, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like if this concept was explored in the earlier seasons, it actually would have been pretty interesting. But by the time they actually do it, it just comes off kinda stupid. I mean, you mean to tell me it takes 10 seasons to find out that you can share fairies? I feel like that would have been a really crucial piece of information in the rulebook. But nonetheless, the introduction of Chloe didn't really go anywhere, and as a result, the Fairly OddParents just kinda kept putting out episodes at its same viewership until it eventually went off air. Now, besides the main series, the Fairly OddParents franchise also had a live-action movie. And weirdly enough, it was starred by Drake Bell from Drake and Josh, if you remember that show. But let's just say this movie wasn't good. Like I said earlier in the video, part of the appeal of the Fairly OddParents was it was wacky, it was magical. The show being a cartoon allowed the writers to do a lot of fun things with the world and Timmy's wishes. And that's something that just doesn't translate well in a live action format. On top of that, at times they try to keep the same humor from the cartoon show, but the difference is the way people act in cartoons versus how people act in real life are completely different. So something that might be hilarious in a cartoon just comes off really cringy when you see a real life human doing it. Plus, I've never really been a fan of the whole live action with CGI characters thing. I feel like it takes a lot, and I do mean a lot of talent to actually pull that off. And oh my god, I don't even know how, but somehow after the first terrible live action movie, Nickelodeon actually made 2 more of these with A Fairly Odd Summer and A Fairly Odd Christmas. At that point, I think they were just milking the Fairly OddParents for whatever name value it had left. And at this point in time, me and many fans of the original Fairly OddParents were begging, pleading with Nickelodeon to just let this franchise rest in peace. After all, it was a staple of so many childhoods and nobody wanted to see this series get milked to death. And because the fans were so vocal, Nickelodeon finally listened and put an end to the Fairly OddParents. Is what I would say if we live in a perfect world, but no, they came out with a new live action show on Paramount Plus called The Fairly OddParents Fairly Odder. For most people, this is widely regarded as the lowest point in the Fairly OddParents franchise. Season 10 of the Fairly OddParents is almost universally hated, but Fairly Odder is somehow even more hated than that. And look, you know, I don't mean to be rude, but who the is this? Bro, that is not Timmy Turner. I'm not letting Nickelodeon get away with this. The show was just an overall dumpster fire. Number 1, the animation for Cosmo and Wanda and the rest of the fairies were just terrible. Number 2, it just had no appeal of the original series. Like I said, one of the things that made the Fairly OddParents so interesting was that Timmy's wishes had consequences, but another thing about those consequences was Timmy would often learn lessons from his wishes. Learning the importance of being a good person, learning the importance of sticking by his real friends. Timmy was learning important lessons in every episode. But when I tell you this show had absolutely none of that. Instead of the show following Timmy Turner, it followed his little cousins, as he would gift them Cosmo and Wanda. And the plot was almost the same for every episode. The cousin has a problem, cousin makes a wish, the wish backfires, and then Cosmo and Wanda undo the wish. There were no lessons learned, there weren't any deeper meanings in this show. It honestly felt like the purest form of a cheap cash grab. Which is why I'm really not that surprised the rating for this show is what it is. And the craziest thing was, it only aired for 1 season and was literally removed off Paramount Plus less than a year later. But after 16 years of an animated series, 3 live action movies, and 1 live action show, the Fairly OddParents was in the worst state it had ever been in years. And I think if the franchise would have just ended in 2022, many people would have just looked at it as a series that they thought fond of in the earlier years, that got dragged on way too long, but is still regarded as one of the best cartoons ever. But then what happens? A new Fairly OddParents show called Fairly OddParents A New Wish gets announced in February of 2024. Oh my lord, if you were on the internet when this show got announced, it was pandemonium. Number 1, we were getting a new Fairly OddParents series that didn't star Timmy Turner as the main character. Number 2, this new show was going to have a whole new animation style deviating from the 2D animated style that many people associated with the Fairly OddParents, opting for a mix of 2D and 3D animation. Yeah, it's safe to say many people weren't jumping at the bits to watch this show when it was first announced. I remember when I first saw the announcement for A New Wish, I wasn't necessarily mad that they were making a new show. I just couldn't see any possible future where a new show would be good. Especially since, whether you love him or hate him, Butch Hartman, the creator of The Fairly OddParents, is not involved with this new project. Now, I've never had the opinion that a reboot or a sequel series can't be good, but I have always had the opinion that if the creator of the original show isn't involved, the chances of the show being good drastically decrease. And with the track record that the Fairly OddParents franchise had up until now, I think many people's faith was really low. But then the show started airing on a week-to-week basis, and to my surprise, many of the review channels that I watch had some positive things to say about the show. Now, were they saying that it was the best thing ever? No. But many of them were saying that the show was much better than they had expected. And I even remember when the show first started airing, it started bringing some attention to itself on apps like TikTok and Instagram because of the new intro theme, which is a slightly modern jazz remix of the original cartoon theme. And after I heard the new theme and heard some of the positive reviews, I actually thought to myself and said, alright, let's check this show out. Now mind you, I went in with my expectations extremely low, and let me just tell you, I'm really impressed. For starters, let's just talk about how this show looks. When I first saw the trailer for this show, I was not the biggest fan of the whole 2D mixed with 3D look. I was so used to the original 2D art style that I couldn't see anything else calling itself the Fairly OddParents looking different. But man, after really watching this show, you see just how visually stunning it is. The animation is so fluid, everything feels so free and smooth. On top of that, the colors in every scene are just so visually appealing. The original Fairly OddParents felt magical. It felt like as soon as Timmy's fairies came, there was this sense of joy, this sense of fantasy that would take over the screen. And the way the original felt is the way A New Wish looks a majority of the time. It could be something as magical as Fairy World or something as mundane as a bedroom. And either way, the color and artwork of both shots still look amazing. But on top of the new art style, something that I really liked is the fact that every episode card is drawn in the art style of the original Fairly OddParents series. It's really just a cool thing for fans of the original series to see these new characters in the old art style, and in a way it kind of feels like they're paying tribute to the original series. Now, something I have got to say is that Hazel Wells is a great main character. She's the little girl that we follow in A New Wish that gets Cosmo and Wanda after Timmy. And I think the reason why I like her so much and why I think she's a great character for a new series is because she's not Timmy. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Timmy Turner. He was a great character and one of the best points of the original series. But it's the very fact that I love Timmy as a character that I don't want to see just another carbon copy of him. I've already seen Timmy go through the trials of dealing with fairies, dealing with magic, dealing with the trials and tribulations that comes with being a better person. And that's the reason why we love Timmy so much, because we were there watching him go through all this. But at the very same time, if I took another character with another character design, another name, and made them act exactly like Timmy and put them through everything Timmy went through, you wouldn't necessarily care about them as much because they're not Timmy. It would feel like the creators are just trying to replicate Timmy in another character. And that's why I think Hazel's so great, because she acts nothing like Timmy. Unlike Timmy, who a lot of times was either selfish or self-centered, Hazel deeply cares for other people. She wants people to feel included. She wants people to feel better about themselves. If there's something negatively affecting other people, she will try to solve it. And if Hazel does do anything out of selfishness, she's very quick to take ownership of it with remorse. Sometimes a little too quick, actually. There's a running joke online that she's one of the most self-aware 10-year-olds in fiction. But because Hazel and Timmy are two different people, this shows not only in her personality, but also in how she uses her wishes. Something I can say is that Timmy's wishes were a little bit more creative, but they were also a lot more extreme, and a lot of times Timmy used his wishes for his own self-gain. Which is why when his wishes would go wrong, a lot of his lessons centered around him being a better person in the sense of thinking of others and being less selfish. But Hazel, on the other hand, uses her wishes a lot of times to help other people. For instance, in one episode, she finds out that one of the students is stealing all of the pudding in the school and is selling it off to other students in exchange for favors. And as a result, most students in the school don't actually get to eat any pudding. So what does she wish for? An unlimited supply of pudding so that every student in the school can eat as much as they want. A lot of Hazel's wishes are set up like this, and even though she does have her selfish moments, I really enjoy that she's a complete contrast to Timmy, because it sets her up as her own person and not just a clone of the original main character. I also think it's great that not only is her personality different, but also her living situation. Timmy's whole thing was that he had neglectful parents, a babysitter that literally tried to murder him at times, an insane teacher that hated him, and his only friends were the school losers. So Timmy was like a real drastic sense of a kid that needed fairies. But Hazel, on the other hand, while her parents aren't necessarily neglectful, her mom and her dad moved to a new city and they both work, so they aren't always there for her. Mix that in with the fact that her brother that she's really close to moved off to college, and this is her first time really being alone. And I've seen certain people say that, oh, Timmy had it way harder than Hazel and she doesn't really deserve Cosmo and Wanda, but I think this is a good way to show that you don't have to be in the worst situation to still be going through things. And if we really want to be honest, Timmy didn't even have the hardest life in his show. Chester deserved fairies way more than Timmy. And speaking of fairies, Cosmo and Wanda are so great in this new series. I'd go as far as to say that this is probably the best iteration of Cosmo and Wanda that we've ever seen. I think before A New Wish, Cosmo and Wanda were probably the most well-rounded in the very beginning of the original series. But as the show went on season by season, it became very clear that the writers were really simplifying their characters. Cosmo went from being a really suave, smooth type of guy to just being a complete idiot. And if you put his pilot version next to his season 10 version, it's like two completely different characters and not in a good way. Then Wanda went from being a character that was like the voice of reason for Cosmo to a character that just used to nag with temper issues. But all of that got completely toned down in the new series. Cosmo is still an idiot, but now he's more of a lovable idiot. And he's not as dumb as what he was in the later seasons of the original series. And Wanda is probably the most relaxed that we've seen in the entire franchise. Instead of getting mad at things, she kinda just lets things play out and gives guidance when needed. I also feel like the writers really gave them a sense of humor in this new show because they're a lot funnier than they've been in any other series. And their relationship with Hazel is probably one of the best aspects of the series. I don't know if everyone's caught on to this, but the show is called The Fairly OddParents. The fairies are supposed to be godparents to their kids. But in the later seasons of The Fairly OddParents and the live action show The Fairly OddParents, that felt like a key component that was sorely missing. But in A New Wish, you see that not only are Cosmo and Wanda here to grant wishes, but they also care for Hazel. They want to see her be better. And similar to how Cosmo and Wanda were substitute parents for Timmy a lot of times, they do the same thing for Hazel. And that's probably the biggest thing that sets A New Wish apart from a lot of things that have came out of the Fairly OddParents franchise in the last couple years. A lot of the live action and later season episodes really relied on nostalgia and the love for Fairly OddParents to keep people engaged. But at its core, the thing that people loved about The Fairly OddParents was that it was a story about a kid going through things and his magical fairies not only helping him through it, but teaching him life lessons. And A New Wish has really been able to take that formula and remix it into something new without having to just rely on nostalgia. Now don't get me wrong, this show does have callbacks to the original series, but they do it in all the right ways. Probably one of the most popular examples, and the one that you've probably seen the most, is the reintroduction of Poof. Instead of just taking him out of the story or reintroducing him as a baby, the writers reintroduced the audience to Poof, but this time as an adult. And the beauty of this is now not only do you have a character that brings nostalgia, but he's also a brand new character because we've never seen Poof as an adult. And when this episode first aired, it brought so much attention to the new series, mainly because it was done so well. Until this episode aired, we hadn't got a single mention of how Poof's doing. Is Poof even in the series? And it left a lot of mystery in the audience's mind. So when he finally made his introduction at the end of the episode with a new character design, a new voice, and a new name, it gave so many fans excitement. And they didn't just make him some generic character, he's actually interesting. Seeing as he's the son of Cosmo and Wanda, he's the perfect mix of the both of them. He's suave like Cosmo in the earlier seasons, but like Wanda, he's also a voice of reason when it comes to his god kid. And I also just really like his design, as his hair is a mix of Wanda's swirl with Cosmo's spike. This was a really top tier moment in the show. We also see appearances from people like AJ, Mr. Crocker, and Vicky. And for longtime fans of the series, these moments are great because it gives you that bit of a nostalgia from the earlier series. That episode where we got to see grown-up Fu gave me so much nostalgia, as he was one of my favorite characters in the later seasons. But even though the show has these moments of nostalgia, it never depends on it fully, because these moments are oftentimes short in comparison to the overall story, and they're used as more of a treat for longtime viewers rather than a way to get people to watch the overall story. Which is great, because the return of these beloved older characters never actually take away from the shine of the new characters and the stories that they're trying to tell. For instance, the way the Fairly OddParents franchise has been going over the last couple years, you would think one of the older characters would be one of the best characters in A New Wish. But Dev Dimmadome, the son of Dale Dimmadome, is easily top 2 characters in the entire show. show right next to Hazel, which is really just a testament to the writers of how they were able to take a character that didn't get that much screen time in the original series and make his son one of the best written characters in the entire show. And I just see so many possibilities for A New Wish because it went from being a show that almost nobody was hyped for to being a show that people are saying is the best thing to come out of the Fairly OddParents franchise in years. I heard that Nickelodeon only greenlit it for one season, but I genuinely hope they consider how popular it's become and how well received this became, because if this show continues to get more series, hey, the original series might have a run for its money. So please, Nickelodeon, please do the right thing and give this show another season. And if you haven't seen Fairly OddParents: A New Wish, I highly suggest you check it out, especially if you're a fan of the original series. But until then, it's been your boy Corn XV, and I'm off this.
Up in this tank, yeah, it's over. Turn on buzz mask up like coke. Pull up in Rovers, it's over. Bitch, I'm cheese sauce, so this coke. Llama, it can't want no hoes. Bottle, it can't let me pour. High as fun, just like a float. Wanna glow up, let me show you.